Hey guys, from this episode, I'm going to talk about Entity Framework Code First approach. I already have a video series on database first approach, and if you want to follow that, the link is in the video description. Code first approach is the most popular approach because you don't have to learn SQL syntax for this. If you want to create primary keys, foreign keys, if you want to make a database, if you want to make a relational database, if you want to query or save data into a database, you do not have to learn SQL queries. If you know C#, that's enough. So let's talk a little bit about Entity Framework. Entity Framework is an ORM for .NET developers. So you can use .NET objects to perform database operations using Entity Framework. It's lightweight, it's extensible, open source, and cross-platform. So if you want to install or if you want to host your project on Mac, Linux, or Windows, you have all the options. All right, so for ID, I'm going to use Visual Studio, but if you want to use Visual Studio Code, you can use it too. It's pretty lightweight. The only thing that you need to do, you'll have to install .NET Core SDK on your machine before you start using VS Code. You can use JetBrains, write it too. You can even use Notepad. Because it's a .NET SDK. You can compile your code through command line interface. I'm going to use SQL Server Express, but you can use any database engine which is out there. You can use full version of SQL Server. You can use MySQL, Oracle, Postgre, SQLite, and memory. There's actually a list of database engines that you can use. These are the database providers, NuGet packages that Microsoft provides. Some of the packages are written by MySQL. Some of them are written by IBM. You can even have Cosmos DB, Azure Cosmos DB provider if you want to. For this demo series, I'm going to follow this architecture. I'm going to create a ASP.NET Web API because JSON is universal language and it gives JSON as an output and takes JSON as an input. So I have freedom to use any technology as an UI. So I'm going to create Web API and install EF Entity Framework Core in it so that I can create a database and database tables and make relations between those database tables. For this demo, I'm going to create a relational database which is going to look something like this. It's bookstores DB database. Where the main table is book, and book has publishers, it has authors, and I'm going to make relation between book and author into book author. Book has sales, and there are stores, and to get into the system we have user table with email address and password. So let's jump into the demo. First thing, I'm going to create ASP.NET Web API. So I'm going to select ASP.NET Core Web Application, and here I'm going to call it as Web Stores Web API. And I'm going to share this project with you. The GitHub repo link will be in the video description. And I'm going to click on Create. Here I will select API project and ASP.NET Core 3.1. This is very simple project. It gives you a controller, a weather forecast controller out of the box, and it returns a random list of weathers for the next 5 days. Let's run this and see how it looks like. See, it's returning random weather for the next 5 days. So instead of showing random weather in the browser here, I would like to create a table, insert record in it, and pull information and show it in JSON format in my browser here. So the very first thing that I need to do, I will have to add a NuGet package. which will be my database provider. So like I said, I'm going to use SQL Server Express for this demo. So I'm going to need Microsoft Entity Framework SQL Server package. But if you're using any other database like SQLite, or if you're using there is a my Postgre package here, or if you're using MySQL, there's package for that. So depends on which database you're using, you will install that package. My database provider is SQL Server, so I'm going to select 3.1 and install. All right, another package that I'm going to need is this tools. This tool will help me update schema of my database. You can see it has add, migration, drop database, update database commands in this tool. So let's go ahead and install this tool. All right, so we have both the packages now. We have SQL Server, which is my database provider, and EntityFrameworkCore.Tools, which will help update schema of my database. All right, so now we'll have to create a DBContext class, which is an important class because that's the class which creates a session between the database and performs all the operations. So I'm gonna call this class as bookstores DBContext, and I'm gonna inherit DBContext class from here. Let's pull the namespace for this. If I hover over this class, you can see that it says DBContext instance represents a session between database and can be used to query and save instance of your entities. So this is very important class. This is where connects to your database and performs all the operations. So whenever we want to perform operations, we'll create instance of this class and do all the operations. All right, so but we need to tell our DBContext which database or which server to connect to. So I'm going to override a method here, and the method is on configuring. Here I'm going to tell which database to connect to. I'm gonna try and connect to, I'm gonna say option builder, and try and connect to, say use SQL Server. And here I will have to pass connection string here. All right. I don't want to type in all the connection string here. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go to Server Explorer here and add a connection and go to, I'm going to say /SQL Express and open this drop down. So when I install SQL Express, it gives me these database out of the box. So I'm going to select one of these database, and when I click on OK, the connection gets added into my database. I'm going to delete this because this is from the previous demo. This master gets added into my connections here. So when I click on properties here, you can see that it gives me a connection string. So I'm going to copy this connection string and paste it here. All right, and you can see that it says data sources SQL Express and initial catalog is masters, but we would like to create a new database. So I'm going to replace that with bookstores DB, and the integrated security is true. All right. So now that I have, now that my DBContext knows which server to connect on, which database to create, I will have to tell this DBContext what table that it should create when it creates the data table. So I'm going to create an entity. Some people create their models here, but that's not a good practice. I'm going to create my model here. I'm going to call it publisher. It's one of the tables from the demo that we are going to go for. And here, this publisher will represent our database table. So the properties that I'm going to create will be created as columns in my database. So this class has primary key, which is publisher ID, and it also has another field as publisher name. So if you go back to our PowerPoint, you can see that our publisher has publisher ID and publisher name. So that's what I created in my publisher class here. All right, so to tell our DBContext this is one of the tables of our database, the only thing that I need to do is I'm gonna have to create a property here of DBSet and say publisher here, and name my property as publishers. Cool. So this is all you need to do as far as the C# code is concerned. If you want to create this database and table, the only thing that you need to do is, there are two steps that you have to follow. First, you'll have to create the migration, and then you'll have to apply that migration. To create migration, the command is add migration, and then you'll have to name your migration. What this command does, this command will create a migration class which could be applied. This is giving me an error because my publisher class is publisher. It should be named as that. See, it creates primary key if the name of my ID matches the name of my class. So if I name it something else, it's not going to create primary key. So let's run the command again. So when I run the command this time, it worked because the name of my ID matches with the class. And if you look at the migration, it created a primary key with publisher ID here. And it also creating a table with column publisher, which is a SQL Server identity. That means that it is an auto increment field, so we do not have to assign this field when we create a publisher. And then it will, there is another column which is publisher name, and the nullable property is set to true, and publisher is false. There are two functions here. You can see that there is up and down. Up gets called when you update the database. Down gets called when you want to revert this migration. We'll learn that in this video series. All right, so we have the migration now. Let's go ahead and apply this migration. To apply the migration command, the only thing that you need to do is say update database. And this will go ahead and create the table, create the database and the table, which will get created in SQL Server. You can see that it's saying apply migration, and then it says done. And if we go back to our SQL Server, this is master's database. I'm going to delete this connection and add another connection. And if I say /SQL Express and open this drop down, you can see that bookstores database is added to our SQL Express server. This wasn't there before. So when I click on OK, you can see that it created publishers table with publisher ID as primary key and publisher name as one of the columns here. All right, so this is how easy it is to create a database and the table using EntityFrameworkCore.Tools. Now I would like to perform CRUD operations. For that, I'm going to go to my controller, and here I do not need all this. I'm going to go to this weather controller. I do not need all this. And instead of returning weather forecast, I want to return publisher. So I'm going to say publisher here and add proper namespace. Nice. I'm going to say return new list of publishers here so that I can get rid of that error. All right. So here I want to perform CRUD operation. Now, I want you to think of this DBContext as an Excel sheet. This DBContext is an Excel sheet, and publisher, the DB sets are like its sheets into that Excel sheet, like tabs into the Excel sheet. So if you want to create a new publisher into your database, you'll have to open your context. You'll have to open the connection. So to open the connection, you'll have to create a new instance of the DBContext and say bookstore DBContext. And I am going to first create an instance of publisher, because this is a new publisher that I want to add into my database. So I'm going to say it's a new publisher, and I do not need to assign publisher ID because it's a primary key. SQL Express will take care of it. So the only thing that I need to assign is publisher name. Here I'm going to say it's Egmont book. Now, if I want to add this publisher into my database, like I said, I want you to think of this context as an Excel sheet. So to add a row into your Excel sheet, what you do, you go to the particular sheet and then you add a row and you tell what row you want to add. And once you're done with that, what you do, you save your Excel sheet. So that's what we are doing. If you want to insert a record into your database, the only thing that you need to do is you should access your DB set, add publisher into it, and just call save changes, and that will insert record into your database. See, this is how easy it is to insert a record. You don't have to open connection, close connection, maintain what all things that you have to dispose, write insert query and make sure your query is right, learn SQL language. You don't have to do any of that to create a record. Let's run this and see how it looks like. So when I run it, this is not going to return anything because I'm returning a new publisher list here. But if I go to my publisher table and open the data, you can see that it created a record with Egmont book into my publishers table here. That's cool, right? Okay, so that's how you can create a table, create a record into your table. Let's comment this code, and I don't want to call this again, so that it'll insert another record into it. Now that we know how to create a record, I would like to read that record. So I'm gonna say return. Let's copy this. Copy this and paste it here. And to read data from your database, the only thing that you have to do is just go to your sheet and say to list, and that's it. That's how easy it is to read data from your database. It goes to the context, DB set, to list. Cool. And this is an INumerable property. This is an INumerable DB set. So you can use toList to return the list of publishers. Let's run this and see how it looks like. So when I run it, it will return the publisher that we just created. It said publisher ID 1, publisher name Egmont book. Now this, I made a mistake. I made a spelling mistake. This book should have been books. So let's go ahead and update this record. We tried creating, reading. Now let's go ahead and update. For updating, the only thing that you need to do, you have to get the reference of the publisher that you want to update from your context. So you try to catch that publisher, the publisher that you want to update, publisher. And there's only one publisher right now in the table. So I'm going to say first and default, as this is a list. And I would like to update the publisher name of this publisher. So I'm going to say it's Egmont books. It's not just book. All right. And now you just say I want to save my Excel sheet, just like we do it in Excel sheet. Publisher, save changes. Nice. So this is you got the reference of the publisher, and then you updated the name of the publisher, and now you're just saving it, just like saving an Excel sheet. Let's run this and see if it updates in the database. So when I run it, you can see that it's now returning Egmont pucks instead of returning just puck. And if I go to my database table here and refresh, you can see that it's saying Egmont pucks. Cool. Now the only thing which is remaining is delete. Delete is very simple. For delete, the only thing that you do, you get the publisher that you want to remove, and then you go to your sheet, you say publishers. Out of all these publishers, I would like to remove this row from my Excel sheet. The publisher that I just pulled, this first publisher here, which is the only publisher, and then save changes. And then I'm pulling to see if anything is coming. This shouldn't return anything. So when I run it, this is not going to return anything. This is not going to return anything. And if I go to my table, you can see that the record that we had created is gone. All right, so this is how easy it is to perform CRUD operations. We created a database, we created a table, and we perform CRUD operations in less than 20 minutes. And we're going to cover a lot of things about entity framework, about migrations, of how you can make relations between different tables in this video series. So yeah, stay tuned. If you have any questions, you can follow me on Twitter or Facebook. You can ask me questions, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching the video. Bye.